On the 19th of August, the lunar nodes, the celestial compass points of human evolution, change signs, moving into the high electric Leo Aquarius axis. And whenever the nodes change signs, the collective story changes with them. The North Node points towards unfamiliar territory, where we are being pushed to grow, to evolve, to stretch beyond what we already know. And the South Node points towards the opposite direction, what is familiar, what we have already developed, and what we are now being asked to release. But this particular nodal shift comes with a rather interesting complication, because the South Node will be moving through Leo, and sitting directly on the South Node is Jupiter, the great amplifier. Let's just say things could get very interesting. So what happens when the planet of expansion meets the sign of ego? To understand it, we need to go back to the beginning. In the Hindu mythology, during the great shining of the cosmic ocean, a demon disguised himself as a god and managed to drink the nectar of immortality. But the sun and the moon, seeing that, exposed him, making the Lord Vishnu sever him into two. But he could not die, because the nectar has already done its effects. So he became two beings, Rahu the head and Ketu the body. Rahu retained the mouth, the appetite, the hunger, but with no body to ever truly satisfy it. Ketu retained the body, the accumulated experience, the past, but without a head to keep on pursuing more. And this is the essence of the lunar nodes. Rahu is the hunger for what we do not yet have. Ketu is what we already have experienced, what has become familiar, and what we are eventually asked to release. One consumes, the other detaches. One reaches outward, the other one reaches inward. And together they describe one of the oldest journeys of the human soul, the journey from desire to liberation. Which brings us to Leo. The South Node in Leo brings us face to face with one of the most seductive traps in human history. And I want to be very clear here. There's nothing wrong with being confident. There's nothing wrong with being creative. There's nothing wrong with wanting to express yourself, to take pride in your work, or even enjoy being admired. The problem begins when admiration becomes nourishment. When we stop saying, I enjoy being seen, and we start saying, I need to be seen in order to be valuable. That's a very different thing. Then the applause becomes addictive. The compliments become necessary. Recognition becomes a form of emotional currency. And suddenly, your sense of self-worth rises and falls according to how much attention you receive. But there's a problem with this arrangement. There is never enough. One achievement needs another. One compliment needs another. One person admiring you is not enough when somebody else is receiving more attention. One successful relationship is not enough when somebody's relationships looks happier. One moment in the spotlight is not enough when the spotlight eventually moves. The hungry head keeps opening its mouth. More attention, more recognition, more love, more proof, more evidence that I matter. And this is where the story becomes particularly interesting, because Jupiter now has entered this room. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. It magnifies, it exaggerates, it increases. And when Jupiter encounters Leo South Node, the tendency may not necessarily to become quieter. It may be exactly the opposite. The ego can become louder. The performance can become bigger. The desire to be recognized can become stronger. The need to be the protagonist can become almost theatrical. We may see more of the collective, look at me at what I have achieved. Look at what I have suffered. Look at why I deserve it. Look at why I am different. Look at why my story matters. And perhaps the most dangerous part is that initially this may feel like empowerment. Confidence, visibility, success, recognition, expansion, everything appears to be working. The universe appears to be saying, here, have more. More applause, more attention, more visibility, more success. More of what you thought would finally make you feel complete. But this is where the plot turns. Because sometimes the universe doesn't destroy an illusion by taking something away. Sometimes it gives you exactly what you asked for. And it lets the bubble expand and expand and expand until it pops. But this is where we need to be careful. Because the lesson of the Leo South Node is not to stop shining. And the lesson of Aquarius is not to forget yourself and become a faceless servant of humanity. That would simply create another distortion. The evolutionary movement here is subtle. You are still being asked to develop confidence, to claim your voice, to trust your creativity, to express your individuality, to have the courage to be different. You are allowed to shine. But something changes about why you shine. The question is no longer, will they applaud me? It becomes, what am I going to do with this light? Because there is a profound difference between shining and needing everybody else to stand in the dark so that you can shine brighter. And this is where Aquarius enters the story. Aquarius represents the visionary, the collective, the unconventional thinker, the person who sees possibilities beyond the structures everyone else accepted. But Aquarius doesn't ask you to sacrifice your individuality. Quite the opposite. It asks you to bring your individuality into the collective. Your strange ideas, your unusual perspectives, your creativity, your particular way of seeing the world. Not as a proof that you are superior, but as something that only you can contribute. This is the movement from the lone wolf into the constellation. The lone wolf says, look at me. The constellation says, look at what we have become together. And that distinction is everything. Because the evolutionary challenge is not to become less special. It's to stop needing your specialness to place you above everybody else. And of course, this doesn't happen only in the public life. Sometimes the stage, it's much more intimate. Sometimes it's another person's heart. The Leo South Node can tempt us into believing that if we finally are adored by the right person, everything inside us will fall into place. If someone loves us enough, chooses us enough, adores us enough, desires us enough, surely we will finally feel complete. But this can turn love into an audition. We perform, we impress, we become what we think the other person wants. Or we become intoxicated with the intensity of the connection and begin filling the cups with fantasy. We start seeing only their wonderful qualities. We put them on a pedestal. We imagine the future with them before we even learn who they are. And suddenly, we are not relating to a person anymore. We are relating to a projection. The same hunger for validation has just changed costumes. Instead of, am I admired? It becomes, am I loved? And there's nothing wrong with wanting love. The trap is believing that another person can give you the sense of worth you refuse to give to yourself. And no amount of romantic attention can permanently fill a void that was created by the absence of self-approval. And this is why we're also being asked to release our attachment to taking emotional risks. Passion can be intoxicating, But when passion becomes fantasy, our vision becomes distorted. We gamble with our hearts. We invest before we know what we are investing in. And sometimes we don't even realize we entered the drama until we discovered we are the only person playing the role we imagined. Another pattern we are being asked to release is comparison. Because comparison creates hierarchy. Someone has more than you and you feel inferior. Someone has less than you and suddenly you feel superior. Someone receives more attention. Someone is more successful. Someone is more beautiful. Someone has the relationship you want. Someone seems to be living a life that you thought it was supposed to be yours. And without realizing it, you enter the competition that nobody asked you to participate in. And you always lose when you judge yourself this way. If somebody else's success makes you feel smaller, you have handed them the power to determine your worth. And if somebody else's failures make you feel bigger, you have done exactly the same thing. Even rebellion can become another form of ego. You can spend your entire life doing the opposite of everybody else just to prove that you are not like them. But if your identity depends on opposing people, they are still defining you. And Aquarius doesn't ask us to agree with everyone. It asks us to stop needing other people to be wrong so that you know who you are. What is right for somebody else may not be right for you. And what is right for you does not need to make somebody else's wrong. Sometimes the most evolved thing you can say is, that works for you, this works for me, and we can still build something together. And here's where this gets more uncomfortable. Because even humanitarianism can become another performance. You can help people because you genuinely care. Or you can help because you need to be needed. You can give because you have something to give. Or you can give because you're afraid if you stop giving, people will stop loving you. From the outside, these two things can look very identical. But internally, they feel completely different. So one of the questions this nodal shift asks is why you are doing what you are doing. Are you caring because you genuinely want to, or because you are afraid of rejection? Are you helping because it aligns with your values, or because you need gratitude? Are you giving freely, or are you secretly purchasing acceptance? Because if you constantly give your power away just to stay safe, you haven't escaped the old pattern. You simply put an humanitarian costume on it. The ego doesn't always want applause. Sometimes it wants to be indispensable. The North Node in Aquarius offers another opportunity. You can belong without becoming identical. You can be different without becoming superior. You can have strong convictions without turning every disagreement into a war. You can find people who understand your strange ideas. You can collaborate. You can exchange perspectives. You can contribute. You can celebrate the success of another person without experiencing it as a threat to your own. And something rather beautiful can happen when you do. The moment you stop demanding that life proves you're special, you become free to discover what only you can contribute. And sometimes paradoxically, the things you were desperately trying to obtain at a personal level begin to arrive naturally. Love, connection, recognition, opportunity, support. Not because you chase them relentlessly, but because you stop making them the condition for your happiness. So perhaps the most useful question during this nodal shift are not how can I become more successful, or how can I get more attention, or even how can I finally get the love I want. Instead, ask yourself, do I need to be admired? Do I need to feel superior? Do I need to be needed? And if the answer is yes, don't judge yourself, just notice it. Because awareness is where the partner begins to lose its power. You don't have to kill your ego. You don't have to become selfless. You don't have to stop being ambitious. You don't have to stop wanting love. And you certainly do not need to stop shining. You simply need to stop making other people's reactions as a measurement of your worth. And perhaps this is why the story of Rahu and Ketu is such a perfect metaphor for this nodal shift. Remember Rahu, the immortal head? Forever hungry, forever reaching, forever opening its mouth, chasing after the nectar of immortality that it could never truly consume. And perhaps the lesson was not that Rahu should stop wanting, because desire is part of being alive. The lesson is learning when desire has stopped serving you. Because there comes a moment you realize that the next achievement will not make you whole. The next person will not make you whole. The next round of applause will not make you whole. And neither is becoming the most extraordinary person in the room. Because if you need the room to tell you who you are still giving the room the power to decide. So perhaps during this nodal shift, the question is not, how do I become more special? Perhaps the question is, what would I really create if I don't needed nobody to tell me that I am? What would you do if nobody applauded? What would you love if you didn't need to be chosen? What would you give if nobody thanked you? What would you create if nobody ever saw it? And perhaps this is where the hungry head really becomes quiet. Not because it has finally consumed enough, but because it finally understands it was never hungry for the thing itself. It was for the feeling it thought the thing would have given it, and that it was something it could never consume. So let yourself shine, but don't build a throne for your light. Love, create, take space. Be strange, be magnificent, and then look around you. Because your light does not become smaller when somebody else's shine. A constellation needs stars. And perhaps this is the real movement of this nodal shift. From being the star everybody is looking at, to becoming a part of something that could not exist without your light. And somewhere between the hunger to be special and the freedom to simply be yourself, the dragon finally loosens its grip. Not dead, not defeated, just no longer starving.